Okay, well, everybody, I'm Beatty Cohan and welcome again. Of course, not to the Ask Beatty show, but I'm really glad to be here today because I have really wonderful news to share about relationships and what we need to actually learn and what we need to do if we ever want to have a successful relationship with anybody. And in 2000, my first book came out, and I had done research with 450 people in the Boston, Providence, and Connecticut area. People of all ages, single, and single, divorced, widowed, and I came up with a 10-step formula. And for people who know me, and I know you don't really know me, I'm a very bottom line person. As a person, as a psychotherapist, if things don't work, let's not waste our time talking about things that are just really just theoretical. And if we can't really take the theory and put it into practice, I think we're wasting a lot of time. So when the book came out, it was reviewed everywhere in the country. It was very exciting. That was sort of my entree in local and national television and radio and print. And I was so hopeful. And for me, it was not about selling the books. It was about, okay, I've come up with this formula, and I think that there's a potential to really change the trajectory of what is going on in the world of relationships. Unfortunately, since 2000, and every single week on the Ask Beatty show, I cite the same statistics about what is going on, and I'm just going to read you some of the statistics. Every day, 3 women are still killed by their so-called intimate partner. That was the statistic that I read 20 years ago, or in 2000. It's the same statistic today. If we're looking at college-age students, between 25 and 30% of college-age students, and I've done a lot of work in colleges, tell me, and this is, all the research shows this to be the case, are in abusive relationships of various different kinds, whether we're talking about emotionally abusive, sexually abusive, financially abusive, physically abusive, and that is what is going on in the world of our colleges in the United States. Last year, I was doing some consulting at East Hampton High School, and I love working with young people. So looking nationally at how are the young people doing in terms of their dating relationships in high school? Well, about 25% of high school kids find themselves in abusive relationships, dysfunctional relationships of various different kinds. And one of the things that I was doing at East Hampton High School, I was there to teach them my Never Make a Mistake and Love Again program, to teach them about what healthy relationships are and aren't, to teach them my formula, which is about how to assess who is right for you and who's wrong for you before committing to any serious relationships. We look at the divorce rate. I don't know whether you're aware of the statistics. The same statistics I talked about in 2000, the same statistics that I'm talking about in 2024. The divorce rate for first marriages is what?
50%?
Yeah, close to 50%. The research tells us 48, 50%. What do you think the divorce rate for second marriages is? 35%. What do you think? About 35%. Would anybody else have any ideas, any thoughts? And this isn't right or wrong. We're having a conversation.
Higher.
Yep. The divorce rate for second marriages, welcome, happens to be 67%. Okay, so we've gone from 48%, 50%,
What did you say?
67%. Okay, for third marriages or more, what do you think the statistic is?
I think they're the marrying kinds that goes up.
Yeah, take a guess.
Yeah, I would hope it goes down.
One hopes it goes.
20%.
70%.
Yeah. We've learned nothing. The divorce rate for third marriages and more is close to 71%.
Oh.
So this is the point. This is the point. We have learned basically nothing at all. And what's so interesting is that we've never had a time where there's so much talk. Mental health talk, right? Relationship talk, self-help talk, coaches, therapists. I mean, it goes on and on and on. And yet with all of this, the reality is that we're really, really, really missing the boat. Okay. So what to do? So I have identified the three things that we all need to, again, learn and do if we're never going to make a mistake in love again. And the first thing is this. Each of us need to be in a good place ourselves, emotionally and psychologically and psychiatrically, and we need to be willing to do the work, to deal with our, what I call, skeletons in the closet, the abuse, the neglect, things that typically begin in our own family of origins. And I used to tell my daughter, Jordana, all the time, the relationship needs to be the icing on the cake. We need to be the cake. We need to be the cake. And so oftentimes, we're hoping and wishing that someone is going to save us, and we're lonely, and the guy appears, or the woman, depending, if you're gay or straight, is going to be the person who's going to transform our lives. And again, the reality is that we have some work to do. People typically do not want to do the work. They don't want to do it. People who work with me, I have a private practice in New York City and a very small private practice here in East Hampton. They know if they're coming to work with me, they're going to work. And we're going to begin at the beginning. This is not going to be bandage therapy. It's not just going to be cognitive behavioral therapy or behavioral therapy, which is fine. We're going to go back, and I'm going to try to help people to emotionally process as best as they can what did and did not happen right from the beginning. Now, we can't change our history. We can't change anything that's happened a second ago. But there sure is a way, and I've done this for so long, to get people to a place where they're finally able to live in the moment without having one foot in the past and one foot in the present. And this is not a cocktail party, and this is not fun. And people, it's tough. It's really tough to begin to finally acknowledge and address and resolve as best as we can the things that continue to get in the way of our life and our relationships. And it's about, lessons to be learned. What have we learned? Have we learned anything? Hopefully, we've learned a few things, and that we are able to, move forward in our life where we're feeling that we are in a relatively good place, regardless of what did and did not happen in our history. And there is no way at all to be able to short circuit this process of self-discovery. And, my husband will tell you that in my life, I am the most impatient person that you will ever want to meet. I want it yesterday. I want it now. I have no patience for anything. Of course, professionally, it's very different. And if there had been a way to not have to do this, to not have to dig, to not have to go back, to not have to work through our stuff, I would have figured this out a long time ago, but it is not true. So that's number one. The other thing that's really interesting, that again, despite all the talk about mental health and self-help and therapists and all of this, what I found, and I say this respectfully, and I love my patients, and I love the people who I talk to, and I love the listeners, and I want people to do well in their lives. However, again, the majority of people have no idea whatsoever what ingredients actually go into a successful relationship. No idea. So if they haven't got their stuff together, and then we're just sort of playing around, we're swimming around, and we don't have the clarity about what ingredients need to be present if we will ever have a shot at having a successful relationship with anyone. And this holds true, by the way. You know, I'm Canadian, of course, dual citizenship. But when I started, after my graduate and postgraduate work at McGill University in Montreal, I began in the inner city schools. So I was a school social worker dealing primarily with immigrants and low-income people who were struggling to pay the rent. And I would go to their places and do home visits, and I was working with the children, and later on I was one of the directors of the whole program for Greater Montreal. But anyways, in the last, I would say, 25 years or so, my clientele have been, I would say, to a very large degree, the rich and famous of this country. So we know the names, we know the people, and one would think that there was a difference in terms of relationship knowledge, relationship skill, how we're doing better, you know, in our lives between people who were really struggling. You know, they were struggling politically, they were struggling economically. And this other group, no difference at all. The only difference, you know, and I say this all the time, you know, you can buy something, you can get a ring, you can go on your private plane, you can go on a vacation. And this does it for about the day and maybe the week, maybe the month if you're lucky. That's it. That's it. So again, no differences. The money and the wealth and all of that doesn't do the trick. It doesn't protect us and help us to find and maintain healthy relationships with anyone. Okay. So, the formula.
What's the good news?
No, it's true. There's. I really have great news. I have great news.
I was just trying to be fun.
No, it's good. It's good. It's good. It's good. We need to laugh. We need great news. So when I did the research, and I came up with this 10-step formula that teaches us how to assess. Now, assess, people hate the word assess. It's not sexy, it's not romantic, it's not fun, but when you think about it, we assess every single thing in our life. Our lipsticks, our creams, our cars, our computers. So we're of a mindset, right, of assessment. We got to be careful what we're bringing in. Our fruits are organic, are not organic. We're very, very careful. But when we think about relationships and people, we never think about assessment, or hardly ever. And you know, before I did this work, and I made my own mistakes, by the way. When I think about how I was working, and I had, you know, a really successful, you know, career. Before I did the research, before the books, before the media, when I think how little I knew, it still just blows me away. With all the theory and the knowledge and everything else. So before I did this, I would meet someone and I would say, gee, whether it was a woman or a man or a colleague, it didn't matter. And I would say, I've met a lovely person, right? I would never say today, ever, that I met a lovely person or a great person or a nice person, or what would I say? Given, and we're going to talk specifically about the formula and the good news so that you are going to be empowered, educated, and safe as you go along. What would I say?
Interesting.
No. No, I wouldn't say that either. What would
I met someone that I don't know.
Okay. Anybody else? What would I say? We're talking assessment. I met someone who.
I want to learn more about them.
Okay, right. I met somebody who appears to be great and nice, and kind and successful and warm. Now, with the research, and we're going to go right into it now.
I met someone I never want to see again.
That's okay too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
Sure, yes. Because obviously there were a lot of red flags and there were a lot of really bad vibes that you were, experiencing. Right. But the thing about the person who appears to be. So with the research and with me in my personal life being the most impatient person you want to know and professionally so patient, the research found, and this was so disappointing for me, that it takes about a year to find out who somebody is and isn't, and that we cannot fast forward the process unless, as you say, there are all these red flags, and which you're going to learn about in a sec, that are just literally staring you in the face, and you better exit the relationship as soon as possible. But again, if we're not in a good place, if we don't know the ingredients, the whole thing just it circles back to the beginning and whether or not, we are really okay ourselves. So this year thing is it's never changed for me, whether it's, people that I'm meeting, new people that I'm meeting as, potential colleagues or anybody. I'll always say, right? They appear to be. And what it does, it slows us down. It's a wake-up call where you're then, hopefully on a trajectory, you're on a path where you know what to look for. So this is what I discovered that culminated in my first book. Now, you're not going to put somebody on trial, but you're going to be clear about what you need to know. So, to begin, I want to know if I'm really serious, whether I'm treating somebody in my office or any place else, I want to know about your family of origin. I want to know about your background. Again, you're not going to put the person on trial. You're going out for dinner. You're not going to really, be the judge. And when I was growing up, this is what happened for me. What was it like, growing up, in your home? Now, you're not going to toss somebody away because they had a tough childhood, because they may have been abused or neglected. But what you want to hear is that despite what happened or what didn't happen in my life, I knew I needed to get help. I knew that I didn't want to be like my mom. I knew that I didn't want to have, a relationship like my parents. And I've read, and I maybe have gone to therapy, and I've worked really, really hard on myself because I knew that my initial beginnings would get me into a lot of trouble if I repeated history. Something like that. Now, you're not going to get the information, on a first date, but this is what you're wanting to find out, what the person learned, what the person did not learn about relationships, because the reality is that the acorn doesn't fall far from the tree. And it's true. It's true. So, again, somebody, has had a tough time, and again, they could be amazing. The people who I work with, they've had horrible beginnings, but they've worked, and they've done well, and they're ready to get on with their lives and not repeat the dynamics in the history of what did and didn't go on in their family of origin. Okay. The next chapter, the next area, is what I call skeletons in the closet. And again, we have to be savvy. Things like, of course, sexually transmitted diseases and substance abuse of various different kinds. You need to know. You need to be aware. You're out, and he or she is drinking too much or drugging, or what about various different medications and pills and psychedelics. There's this whole thing now that's going on in the world of psychedelics, and MDMA was supposed to be legalized by the FDA in August. I think that's probably not going to happen.
People might happen still. We don't know yet.
In August?
It might still happen, yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, is it early
Ecstasy.
Yeah, well, there's the next meeting's on the 11th, yeah.
It is, yeah. So we have to be careful. We have to be mindful. We have to be careful whether or not the person who we think we would like to maybe really get to know and maybe have a relationship with is in a good place, whether or not we're talking about drugs or whether we're talking about mental health. And this is not going to happen overnight. And in fact, I think that the very, very best time to really find out about, kind of moving along about a person's communication skills. When people ask me all the time, what are the most important 2 ingredients that make or break relationships? It's clear. Emotional communication and problem solving. I mean, if we can't, and this is not where we're going for dinner. This is not that kind of emotional communication, problem solving. And we soon start to see the reality, who this person is and isn't, and the kinds of skills that they have or don't have when there's a problem. And that's why when there is a problem or a crisis in a relationship, that is really the time to keep our eyes and ears really very open. And then you start to see how well or how badly this person is able to communicate, how well or how badly this person is able to problem solve. And if we're talking about problem solving, we're talking about conversation. I wrote a recent article for Dan's papers on the art of conversation. What's happened? People don't know how to have conversations. If we don't agree immediately, whether we're talking about the Middle East or we're talking about Trump or anybody else, we have to be able to have a dialogue. Let's hear what you have to say. I don't have to agree, but let's talk it out. And ideally, in our relationships, in our intimate relationships, we're looking for a process where people have conversations, where they discuss, if there are differences, where they know how to negotiate, where there are compromises. Of course, certain things are absolutely not compromisable, like abuse of any kind, and where we're looking toward a win-win resolution. In our relationships, isn't that what this is about? We want to come up with win-win, not win-lose. And this is another column. I write to Ask Beatty for Dan's papers every single month. And this win-lose thing, it's killing us. You got to be, I'm a former number 10 Canadian junior tennis champion. And I still compete and all of that. On the courts, I want to win all the time, of course. In my personal life, in my relationships, I want win-win. I want win-win. Sure, I'd like to do win-lose, but I know that's not gonna be good. That's not gonna nurture, my relationship. So again, as we're going through the process of discovery, in finding out who the person is or isn't, these are the kinds of things that we have to be looking for. Emotional intimacy. And we confuse it with sexual intimacy. You can have great sex and zero emotional connection or zero emotional intimacy. Emotional intimacy, caring, sharing, affection, love. How was your day? Can I help you with the dishes? Compassion, respect. That is, that's what emotional intimacy is all about. And again, as we go along in our relationships, and if we're honest with ourselves, and I talk about being honest all the time, and it's not like a judgment. The importance of being honest with ourselves. If we're not honest with ourselves, we can't be honest with anybody else. And we have to be able to say, as you said, I'm leaving. I'm never going to see you again because of a number of things that I've observed. And so the emotional intimacy is it's critical. We want to be with somebody who loves, who cares, who gets it, who understands. Otherwise, it's going to be a disaster. It's going to be a disaster. And how easy it is in the beginning to ignore all the red flags. We want it. We're lonely. I mean, we're in the midst of a loneliness epidemic right now. Even our Surgeon General is talking about the loneliness epidemic. We want the connection. We want to be close. We want to have a relationship. At least most people do. And yet, it's the choices that we make. They can kill us. I mean, they can absolutely kill us. One of the I have a lot of little pet phrases. And one of the things I talk about a lot is that a little bit of poison is poison. How people will say, well, like I had a couple. I lived in Sarasota for a number of years. And lovely woman, she came to me clinically depressed. The cars, the planes, the trips, the this, the that. And she said to me, I have to tell you, my husband hits me once a year. We're on our yacht. It's New Year's. Yes, he drinks too much, and maybe we've had too much to drink. And it seems as if this is what goes on once a year. Now, it was almost like she was looking for me to say, well, it's only once a year, Hey, listen, you've got this great lifestyle. So in working with her, of course, what did I discover? She was hit every day as a kid. So in her mind, once a year wasn't so bad. So we got him in. I mean, she worked with me for a while. She had a lot of stuff, a lot of unfinished business that she had to sort out. And she told him, if that ever happened again, she was gone. And here was this corporate guy, like nobody ever confronted him. And it was great. And he just sort of sat there. And I remember seeing her at an event in Sarasota a couple of years ago. And she said it was okay. But this is the other thing that I talk a lot about. People will say, well, he does this or she does this, and this is what's happening externally. So we have to, again, be honest with ourselves in asking ourselves this question. What is it about us that is encouraging and enabling people to hurt us? And it's so easy to say, well, he did this and she did this and this and this, and I'm going to be the victim. Now, we're not talking about children, okay? That's a whole different thing. But what is it about us that we are going to allow and enable people to hurt us? We have work to do, right? It could be from the past. It could be from, past relationships. So again, going back to, we need to be in a good place. When it comes to sex, we're not doing well in the bedroom. In fact, even the kids, I mean, people are having a lot less sex than I think that they've had in a long, long time. Now, the porn sites, this was another article that I wrote, the porn sites, there are thousands of porn sites. And people are on the porn sites hours and hours. I was treating two young, actually, brothers from Chicago in their 20s and good jobs and good families. And, talking about their dating lives, which were almost non-existent, and we're talking about sexual gratification. And there's hours and hours and hours every day on the porn sites. And so I don't know whether or not the pandemic exacerbated any of this, but the porn sites are doing very well financially. I mean, it's billions. I haven't got the numbers here, but I mean, it's just a multi-billion-dollar industry. So if we're talking about sex, I've written about how to put the sizzle in your sex life. And again, we need to be in a good place. And if we're having our own issues, we need to take care of our issues, our emotional issues, the physical issues, whether there was sexual abuse or whatever had happened, so that we're ready and able to be able to really enjoy sex. Again, if our relationships are not in a good place, I mean, we know as women, the majority of women, we are not going to want to have anything to do if our relationships are not solid and we're not feeling close and we're not feeling connected. The other thing.
How do you identify sexual abuse if you're in an intimate relationship? Because a lot of people don't know that they're being abused.
Well, I think that, I mean, and that's maybe not even necessarily use the word abuse. Anything that makes you feel uncomfortable is something that you should not be doing. Anything. Some people, they like to have some sort of physical pain. I mean, that if you want physical pain, and I hate physical pain, that's not okay. And if it goes on, I mean, that's abusive. And it's on me to say, listen, I'm uncomfortable. I'm uncomfortable with A, B, C, or D. And never to say yes when we mean no. Again, we need to be okay. We need to know what's okay. We need to know what's not okay. So anything at all that makes a person feel uncomfortable sexually is never anything that they should be engaging in. Someone will say, oh, well, you should be cool, or you should be more adventuresome. If you're not adventuresome and you don't feel good about whatever it is that this person is wanting you to do, then just don't do it. And then maybe you need to say goodbye to the person. If they can't respect your boundaries, and that's something else. We all have boundaries. And so many people are reluctant for a lot of reasons to set the boundaries. And and I'll say to people all the time, you're getting too close to that line. And we never must allow people to cross over that line that makes us feel bad, that makes us feel uncomfortable, that makes us feel depressed or anxious or scared, ever, whatever those boundary lines are. But again, we need to have the confidence to know that we're okay. And that look, the relationship really does need to be the icing on the cake. And we really do need to be the cake. And I don't know about you, I would rather be alone than be in a toxic, dysfunctional, horrible, horrible relationship. Even like that woman was saying, he only hits me once a year. Like, who wants to be in that sort of a situation? We need to do whatever it is that we need to do to make us flourish as individuals. And this holds true for men, and this holds true for for us as women as well. Getting back to the whole sexual thing, the sexual side effects of medications, the overprescription medications, the prescription medications. There are real sexual side effects. And the thing is that I don't know about you, in all the years, there's never been a gynecologist or a doctor who's ever asked me about my sex life, and it's never come up. Luckily it's great, but it's never come up. So we need to, be our own guides in many, many ways. But the sexual side effects of alcohol is a depressant, of course, and I'm working with a couple right now. They have many problems, including his multiple affairs, and she's gotten to a point where she is saying, enough is enough, and she has enabled and gone along with this for a long, long, long time. But anyways, we were talking about their lack of sex. And he'd been on Lexapro, which is an antidepressant, and was talking about how it was very difficult for him to ejaculate. So again, we have to be educated and savvy and smart, and if we don't know, we should find resources, people who we can ask these kinds of questions to. And I know there was a study done with 100 happy or very happily married couples. And 50% of the women were having, difficulty getting aroused. There was another third that had difficulty with orgasms. So there's a lot of communication also that, has to go on. And of course, with menopause and hormones and, things change and testosterone levels, drop. So there's a lot of conversation. There's a lot of education. There's a lot of information that we really need to be committed to, learning about, whether we're talking about sex or whether we're talking, about really anything. And to have the partner who is open and willing to have discourse. Otherwise, why are we with someone? We can't talk to them. Sexually things aren't good. And this is what loneliness can really do. And this is also what the unfinished business beginning in our own family of origins tend to do, where we are inadvertently and unconsciously, we're really kind of repeating our history. So that, again, I can't say it too often, where, we need to take care, of our business. And then again, in this whole assessment process, looking at past relationships, and as we're assessing, because I was thinking about this morning, as we're assessing our partner, we need to really assess ourselves. My Ask Beatty segment on my radio show starts off, it's the same thing every single week. How are you doing? How are we doing? And I go through our mental health, in our relationships, in our job, in our self-care, in our sleep, in our diet, and all this kind of stuff. So again, it's not just about assessing the other person. We need to be honest with ourselves in terms of how well or how badly are we doing in our lives. And if things are going great, it's wonderful, then just keep doing exactly, what you're doing. But if things are not going well, the real question is, what are you going to do? What are you prepared to do about it? And when I find people wait way too long to deal with issues. And, the other thing that I constantly say is that we don't need to navigate life on our own. And that, the very best thing that people can do is reach out and ask for help. And I know that help is expensive, and I know that the insurance companies don't do, oftentimes a great job in giving people, sufficient kinds of visits. And all I can share with you, I've always, worked with people when it comes to fees. I think it's about caring. Either you really care or you don't care. And if you care, so you negotiate a fee like you negotiate other things in life. But the chapter, it's what's your deal, let's make a deal, in looking at other relationships that, your potential partner may have had. And, typically there's a pattern. And we have our own, patterns as well. So you're wanting to have clarity that the person, may have had issues, may have had drug issues, may have had all kinds of problems, but that they too, like you, are on a path, on a healthy path, on a constructive path. And then, you have the potential of being able to have something, and that you'll be safe. You will be safe. And if you don't go through this, and if you don't find out the information, it's really hit and miss. And we're really putting ourselves at risk, in all kinds of ways. And, finally, thinking of chapter 10 here is kind of compiling all of this in your minds and saying, what I want in a serious long-term relationship, if that's what you're looking for, what I don't want in a relationship, and then describe the reality of my relationship. Now, at the end of every chapter, there are exercises, there are books, things that people really have to honestly think about, and it's really all there. If we look, we will see the reality, of what's going on and what's not going on in our relationships. And sometimes it's hard to look, and it's hard to see the reality, because that means we're going to have to do something, and we're going to have to probably do something very different than we have done in our past. And that's where we need to pivot, but we don't need to do it on our own, So this whole, for me, I think, and you tell me, I think this is sort of good news, that there are things, the 3 things that you need to do to, find, maintain a successful relationship, and never make a mistake in love again. Ourselves, understanding the ingredients, and really taking this formula. And this for me is not about selling books. I was so disappointed that when the book initially came out, and everybody said this is going to be a New York Times best-selling book, that the book didn't do well. But then when I thought about it more, not only did the book not do well, I mean, it still sells, but it didn't do great. Look at the statistics here. We're not doing well. And that for me has just been, very depressing and very sad that we're doing the same thing. And we're not serious students. And that's on us if we are willing to make some changes and be open to learning some things that most of us, including me, never learned. And my late father used to say, all the time, he was my tennis coach, and it's a new day. Every day is a new day, and we have the potential and the possibility every single day to do it differently, or not. So, another one of my little pet phrases is, lessons to be learned or not. And that's our choice, right? Right? We can continue doing what doesn't work, or we can say, this really doesn't work, and I've been at this a long time, and I need to make some changes, So in a nutshell, this is the good news, and I'm so curious to really hear what you all have to say about this.
Okay, I'll go first.
Sure, great.
Since I was the first one here. First of all, I love your concept of you're the cake, taking care of yourself. Everything starts with you, 100% agree. And I think when things are missing in your life, just like you want a good cup of coffee, you want a good glass of wine, or you want that instant fix, and oftentimes that's where we go wrong, right? Because we're just looking to fill a void or a need. And it's funny because I've been divorced 8 years, and I've had 3 relationships, and they've all seemed to be like a year and a half. And I was talking to my daughter who's 18, and she's like, "Mom, but it takes you so long to figure out like who people are." And I'm like, "No, but really, it's like really good."
Yes.
It's been the most that I've been in a relationship is a year and a half, and that seems to be my number for figuring somebody out. And so that was really good news for me to hear. Yes. Because sometimes you say to yourself like, "Oh, but I tend to give people the benefit of the doubt. I get to know them, and so it takes time."
Yes, it does.
And so that was really, really a good point. And just, being able to have the intimacy with somebody on both sides. So sometimes you have a great person and you think it's all great, but like if you can't do the problem solving together, then you're left feeling alone.
Right.
Or you can't, really create the bonds that you need for a good relationship.
I have a question. I have a question for you. If you, and maybe you do, if you knew or know these 10 different areas of discovery, would you have stayed in these 3 relationships for a year and a half? Do you think?
Yeah, I probably would have ended in a year.
Within okay.
Yeah.
So you would have saved yourself 6 months.
Probably
Okay.
a year.
Yeah.
I think, but now I have more awareness, and that's why I came today. And I think all of us, you say we're doing really badly, and it wasn't a bestseller, but maybe people didn't want to hear it.
They
but
don't.
The fact that we're all here says like, hey, we want to learn something.
Right.
And that's pretty cool.
I think so.
Thank you for sharing.
Well, and thank you for coming. I mean, really, one never knows. Other comments, questions?
Do we know the 10 steps? You kind of didn't tell us the 10.
I did.
The
Yeah.
10? Okay.
Yeah, the 10, beginning with one's family of origin, so that you're having to find out what this person, what learned or didn't learn. Skeletons in the closet, looking at areas of abuse, and more skeletons in the closet. That's chapter 3. The communication and the problem solving, that's chapter 4 and 5. The emotional intimacy part, really understanding what emotional intimacy is and whether this person is capable or not capable. How's my sex life? Looking at the sexual thing, looking at the past relationships of this person, and what the pattern has been. Why didn't things really work out, and what have you learned? What's changed? What's different? That's the other step. Looking at things like interests and religion, and do we really have anything in common at all? And then compiling all of your data and saying, this is what I want, this is what I don't want, describe the reality of my relationship, what can I compromise on, what can I not compromise on, and either you're going to move forward or you're going to say goodbye.
So do you feel like this relates to online dating a lot?
Absolutely.
See what they check with.
Absolutely. I mean, I've had situations where people have, texted and sexted and communicated and emailed where they didn't meet. And I had one woman who did this for almost a year, and then she met him, and guess what happened? They never saw each other again. So it was 1 year of the sexting and the texting and the emails and everything else. And yeah, they did everything, but the face-to-face meeting that's exactly right. And and that's the thing too, even about the therapy. I mean, since the pandemic, 90% of the people that I work with in New York City don't want to come in, and it's a real mistake. So on Sunday, people come in New York. Here, people come in, because it's easier, and it's not the same, and you don't get the same. It's just not the same, and it's not the same if you're getting to know somebody either. Online. I mean, everybody that I know who's single is online. But what's interesting too? I've met with a couple of the, in quotes, top matchmakers in New York that we all know about, who charge an astronomical amount of money. And what I found, see, I'm not even going to name names, I'm going to really be nice. They don't go through this process. And it really, I remember coming home and saying to Jim, it's like, wow, $250,000, $50,000, I mean, it's like unbelievable amounts of money. Yeah. And how do you match people without going through this? Yeah, so that, yes, well, I guess you could try to buy it, but whether it's a matchmaker or you on your own trying to get to know somebody. I mean, this is it. Nothing has changed since I wrote this originally. It's the same thing that needs to be looked at. These are the same important ingredients that make or break relationships. Nothing has changed other than the numbers have not changed.
Right. But do you think if someone has that book and they're meeting someone for the first time, and they just kind of you can do that.
Yeah.
You can ask those questions.
Yeah, absolutely.
Faster, if you can check them off right or
yeah.
wrong.
Yeah.
Book on a date. No.
What?
Leave the book at home, though.
Yeah, but those questions are
They're-
very good.
They're important.
And I don't, why drag things on?
I agree.
So I'm a very controversial person, and so I almost purposely do a little when I'm dating. I don't know, these men do anyway, so I kind of test them. You know about testing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, the little testing thing, and then sometimes the testing is considered like a little jabbing. Sometimes the testing is considered, you don't seem to trust me or believe me, and probably I don't. I initially walk in as non-trusting.
Right.
So that's been an ongoing issue. My mother was married 4 times, so I always feel like I'm always the person who doesn't trust any of these men. And they have to prove something for me to want to be with them.
Okay.
So physically or
right.
emotionally, all that, right? So that's my hurdle, sort of the trust, so that the intimacy can even occur. So until I feel that connection of trust and intelligence,
right,
not just emotional intelligence, like asking them, do you know who Frank Lloyd Wright is? And they say no, then I go on and on
Right,
and on. And
right,
I know who
right.
Eric Fischel is. And then I become less and less interested. So I get turned off like that.
Okay.
And that's like the wrong shoes, the teeth are bad, they smell funny. So anyway, there's a long, horrible list that, you wrote that book, you should see my book. It's like the Bible, the Old Testament with the New Testament. But I'm going to go fast forward because who cares about my issues? Because we can talk about that at some point. I have a podcast about women. Called Inside the She Cave, where women come together and talk about things. And these are women that are trailblazers, innovators, and rule breakers. And I find men, in most cases, not developed, not that curious, not that interesting. And be honest with you, they say there's a top for every pot. Well, where are the pots? So the issue for me is where is the inventory? Because I know in sales you have to make a lot of calls till you get your customer. I don't think the men are out there, and if they are, they're good looking, but they're gay or they're fluid. So what's the answer to that issue?
I hear this every hour.
I'm sorry, I kind of am over the top a little bit. I apologize.
I'm curious what she said.
Where the heck are they?
Let's see what her response is.
You passed it. Well,
I
but
hear.
She was lucky, I think.
We're both.
Oh, you're both lucky.
Well, he was my childhood sweetheart, and the fact was we went in many different directions throughout our life, and only reconnected 13 years ago, and got married 8 years ago. So we both look. Let's just say we all have made mistakes. We all have made a lot of mistakes in our lives.
But are they mistakes or are they just part of the process? Like,
Well,
I don't like to say the word mistake because I feel it's just so negative. But I mean,
Well, we do make mistakes.
yeah.
And hopefully we learn from them.
yeah,
And what
hopefully.
do you think about Cindy? Do you have responses with some of what Cindy was saying?
I think that there are good men. I think that there are good men out there. I really believe that. But I hear this.
But does it take more developing on the woman's side? Like, so she said her bandwidth is like 0.
Cindy.
I meant
Cindy.
Yeah, I know we know.
Yeah.
I just
So
saying hello again.
Okay, so Cindy.
Maybe a small
No, but
small
her
percentage,
bandwidth
yeah.
is like 0. So she's like, I get it, and so like sometimes my bandwidth is 0 too, and so then I feel like, okay, I have to do all this extra work for the guy because the guy isn't where I am.
You don't have to do it. That's a choice.
Okay, so that's
That's a
getting
choice.
out.
I mean, as long as you have, you have clear. Nobody's perfect. We're not perfect. You're not. No, we'll never find perfection. Okay,
Compromise, of course.
but it depends on what we're compromising on. Certain things are absolutely not compromisable. Good communication, good problem solving, abuse of any kind. Yeah, I mean, those are things that we should never, ever, ever think about compromising on. I mean, there are other things. Okay, is your house bigger or smaller? Or I mean, so things like that. But I mean, fundamental things that absolutely have to be present in a successful relationship are things that we should not say, oh well, it's okay. And if you have somebody who really cares about you, they're going to step up and they're going to say,
Where do you find this person?
It's a challenge. Everybody is saying this. I mean, you're right.
Has your back. I think it's when you're living life.
Okay, well, but your wife's saying
Well,
it's a challenge.
it
and everyone's saying
it is a challenge, and everybody
So
is
let's be
saying.
realistic.
It's
It's
tough.
not easy. Trust me, I'm out there.
I have to. I'm sorry. I just have to interject for a minute.
Please interject.
I'm right now. I'm in an amazing relationship.
Great.
Okay. And I came today. A friend invited me, and I came today because I said, well, let me check and see what I'm. Did I do what you're
Right.
advocating?
Right.
And I have to tell you that when I was 60, 2 years ago I turned 60, and I had been alone for over 20 years. I did not have a relationship. Obviously, I was very busy with my career, with my mom, taking care of her, blah, blah, blah. But when all of that is over, and I am revamping my life, and I sold my property out here, and I moved back to Brooklyn, and I'm thinking, I'm going to be fine, I've got this plan, and then I meet this guy.
Uh-huh.
Now, you said, well, they're good looking, they speak gay. And I just think that about him because I you know, I mean, like, where did you come from? And the one thing I have to say is that I took my time.
20 years.
And, well, I took my time to get myself
Right.
right. Something I wish that I'm witnessing my sister do right now. She's been married 5 times, divorced 5 times. And each relationship, except for one, was abusive in some way or another. Okay? And what she realized is that, you've mentioned it, it's like, first of all, she's impulsive. And then her background was being a people pleaser. We grew up as people pleasers. Love me, I'll do whatever I have to do. Just love me. Abuse me, it's okay. Just love me. No. And my first sentence to this guy was, either you take me as I am or leave me alone.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
And I meant it because what I realized after 20 years, I don't need you. He's the icing.
Great. And you're the cake.
And I'm the cake.
Wow.
And the most beautiful thing about the relationship, aside from the fact that he's good looking, but for me, what? Who? And I look at him sometimes and I go, you love me. I'm just telling you this. You love me. And he's like, yeah. I'm like, what's wrong with you? You know? But the truth of the matter is, what's wrong with me for thinking that there might be something wrong with him because he loves me? I have to still, every day, look at myself and say, I'm worthy. Too many women don't do that. And demanding, and it's not the sex, it's the emotional, supportive, respectful, loving, demonstrative relationship that we have with each other every day. We do not need Valentine's Day. Every day we're showing each other an appreciation for who we are. Even he's not one to talk. I don't talk much. I don't like to say anything. He shows it every day.
That's wonderful.
And it took me, and I still shake my head like, who are you? Are you real? You're either the biggest con artist or you're the real deal.
Do you think it's afraid of being hurt?
Yes.
Yeah, because you're really happy.
And he was hurt horrible, but I don't need
And how did you meet?
Well, it turns out that I needed some work done in my house, and I called this guy.
So he was the plumber.
And he was the person who worked for the person that I hired. And the person who brought him along was like, don't get involved with her, she's my client, blah, blah, blah. And I heard that, and I was like, you just lost business, buddy.
So let me ask you this: Are you really feeling like the cake? Do you feel great about yourself? Do you feel good about yourself? Do you feel deserving of happiness and being in a terrific relationship?
Good question. The answer is most of the time, yes.
Good.
Could I say that 5 years ago? No.
So you've done a lot of work.
I've done a lot of work.
You see? And
doing the work
kudos.
is really important. And honestly, coming here confirmed what because I wanted to see. We talked so much. I mean, blah, blah, blah. Before I even let him, and then I tested him. He came over, hung out.
That's great.
And then he's like, okay. I'm like, okay, 11 o'clock, time to go. Gotta go.
Yeah.
And he's like, okay, he left. And then next time he came over, he wanted to stay, but I'm like, no, gotta go. And he left. And he showed his patience. He showed that he was a gentleman.
Yeah.
He showed that he would respect my wishes. Those were big tells for me to say,
absolutely.
Okay, I'll let you in a little more. And we're still testing the waters. It's been 2 years. We just celebrated our second anniversary.
Congratulations. Yeah, and congratulations to you for doing what you need to do to get yourself to this.
20 years for me to get my
Listen, most people never get there. If 20 years at least, you're in a good place.
So, anyway, I just want to say thank you for that.
Mazel tov is right.
Never get there. Right, and I didn't think, I swear to you, I did not think that I would ever be with somebody. I thought I'd be alone for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
And not until I'm 60 years old, who finds a great guy at 60 years old? And,
I think, it's all possible.
but it just,
Yeah.
gave me that smile, and we started talking, and he said he'd help me with this, that, and the other.
It's great.
And I'm like, you're not getting into me now. And then, we joke a lot, and we say, oh, well, you got past my snipers. that are on the roof protecting me. You know, you got past all of my defenses, but he didn't do it through force, abuse, manipulation.
Yeah.
He was just respectful, patient.
Just what you deserve. Just what we all deserve. We all deserve.
He must have done a lot of work too. To get to
Well, you're right. He probably, yeah. You know, like my husband was asking me as we were driving, you know, in from East Hampton, did I think there were going to be any men? And I said no. Well, you're here, and you asked the question, and I think that
over there that I wanted to
mixed.
join.
It didn't say just women.
no, it didn't.
So I was
it
really
didn't.
surprised.
Yeah.
Most of the time, do you not have men? Is it mostly women?
Most of the time, for these kinds of presentations, I don't. However, in my old Sarasota practice, I would say at different times, the majority of people who would call were men, which was really interesting.
That's interesting.
Who were having relationship issues. Almost nobody ever really calls about sexual issues, although, you know, you obviously I get into it, you know, and ask a million questions about everything. But not so much in New York. I don't think so. I mean, some, but a very, very, very small percentage of the people who even contact me. Although, you know what? I think what I'm saying is not true. You know, people read the column, and the people who actually comment and will email me happen to be men. That is real. Yeah, that's sort of interesting. Any other? You're so welcome. Any other comments, questions, anything?
What about narcissism?
Well, that's a killer, right?
Yeah, well, can you talk about it a little bit?
Well, you know, if we're talking about being with, you know, the, in quotes, you know, narcissistic type of person, we have to ask ourselves, what is it about us that wants to live with somebody who really only cares about themselves? That's really the central question.
Thank you so much.
Oh, you're so welcome. We're not going to change. We can't change anybody, okay, whether they're narcissistic or anything else. We can encourage change, and ultimately, we have to be honest with ourselves and look at the pros and cons, and, you know, what's life like living with a true narcissist? It's not great, and it's so scary to make changes in life, especially, you know, different times in life, older, you know, it's tough.
Well, I'm not talking about living with anybody. I'm just talking about, like, dating somebody that seems to come across as narcissistic.
Who seems to or is
Well,
in your assessment?
I'm really asking you because I'm a little confused. You know,
Give me some specifics
well,
about how.
he doesn't use the phone.
Uh
He
huh.
doesn't use email. He only texts.
Uh huh.
To me, he seems very demanding and critical.
Uh-huh.
No matter what I say, what I do.
Here-
I did the pizza at the pizza place was like, okay. What do you mean it's okay? That's like the best pizza in the world.
Uh-huh.
You know.
So he puts you down.
Oh yeah.
Get rid of him.
Yeah. Well, that's.
That you don't need to wait
Okay.
a year. Done. Finished. Let
Okay,
me know.
so-
Finished.
Well,
Go.
I actually just did that via text.
Good.
Yesterday.
Good girl.
So,
Good for you.
Good for you. Definitely. Yeah.
But you know, you always question yourself.
Of course
you
we
know,
do.
And say,
You know.
It's frustrating. It's frustrating
Yes.
to be around people that have.
It's very easy to second guess ourselves. It really is. But good for you. He sounds awful.
Where can we get your book?
You can get the book here. Yes, I have books. It's on Amazon.
No?
Yes, this is.
Say it was not on Audible?
It's
On Audible?
I don't know.
What pizza place?
Well, you would know. If it was
I
on Audible.
think
It's
probably
the one in
have
Wayne's
it.
Stop.
I don't
have
think
it.
so.